Hello, I'm Chad McDonald, Cultural Arts Superintendent for the City of Cookeville. Welcome to my office here at the Cookeville Performing Arts Center. Enjoy host Matt Wilson's conversations from Backstage tonight as he talks with director Jennifer Furch and cast members Sam Raper, Holly Mills, and Sarah McDonald from our recent production of Tea for Three.
Welcome to Conversations from Backstage. We have a real treat for you guys today. We're talking with the cast of Tea for Three. Joining me is Jennifer Williams. Is that what I should call it? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And Holly Mills.
Hi.
Holly Mills played Lady Bird Johnson, and there you can see her as Lady Bird. Sam Raper.
Hi.
Okay. And Sam Raper played Pat Nixon. There you see her. And Sarah McDonald.
Hello.
And she played Betty Ford. There she is, it's Betty Ford. So yeah, we're talking about the play Tea for Three by Eric Weinberger and Elaine Bromka. It was directed by Jennifer Williams. And we did this back in February of 19, is that correct? Yeah. And it is a play that is about three first ladies, and it goes in sequential order, we'll say that. That's probably not the right word, but and shows them passing on or taking over the reins of being first lady from one to the next. This show is a little bit different than most of the shows we do. Actually, we've done a few like this, but most of the shows that we do or that are out there are about fictional characters. And so this one is about people that actually lived and actually did things, and you have to portray that. So let me start this off with Jennifer. How did you approach directing the play in that sense, in that you had three actors that you needed to portray people that are actually out there and did things?
I literally started with doing research, looking for photos and videos and recordings, contemporary news pieces, and put together kind of a pile of research for the girls to start going through. And then I think they took that as a jumping off point and did their own research. We knew that we couldn't really look exactly like our ladies, and we can't sound exactly like our ladies, but they were trying to take what they could from the actual film and and incorporate it into their style of communicating.
Cool. Okay, so she mentioned that she did some of the research beforehand. How much research did you guys do as actors? Sarah?
More than I really thought I would be doing. Jennifer would send pictures and any clippings, and I was so personally interested in my character that I just kept going. And not only that, I was interested in the other ladies as well. I was born in the early 60s, I guess I could say that. And so I was interested in this anyway. But I learned a lot about each of these ladies at the time that I didn't even know. Betty Ford playing that character was a joy of my life. It really was. And working with these ladies too. It was a thrill. But just she was outspoken and she spoke of things that just weren't talked about during the time. But once she talked about it, it became comfortable for society to talk about it. And she was an effective lady.
Oh, great. Sam, anything to add to that on your character?
No, I mean, I agree. I did research. I felt completely in love with my lady. Pat she's a strong woman. She was really great. She loved Richard. She stood by him and tried to help as best as she could, but he shut her out. He had let her. Maybe.
Holly,
it wouldn't have for him, but.
For me, my biggest challenge, or at least the challenge I placed on myself, as I do lots of things, was trying not to sound identical to Lady Bird, but I mean, old Texas accent. I thought I need to at least try to sound somewhat, from that that place. So a lot of my research, aside from the materials that Jennifer provided, was I went and found some old audio diaries she used to do. She would speak her diary entries, and so it was fun to listen to her and to try to get her, her slow, methodical, perfect speech, her enunciation patterns. And I found that I also fell in love with her as well. She just was an interesting person, a gentle spirit, and didn't get nearly the attention that she deserved, I feel. But that was the bulk of my research, was just trying to, in some small way, give a hint of her in my voice and my presence.
Yeah.
You did a really good job with that too, because I think particularly with like community theater, we're not going to reproduce that person exactly. So choosing particular words and particular phrasings and, and things that you can be really, really consistent about is what brings the character to life and kind of gives it a realism. So you aren't falling in and out of an accent that's too much for you to do. You really focused on, hitting particular things and doing it exactly the same way every time. And I think that's what made her feel really real to me.
Thank you.
I agree with that as
Well,
well.
and that was a struggle for me because as far as acting goes, I had the least amount of experience. And so one night, Jennifer gave me the direction, don't worry about trying to sound like her as much as don't sound as Southern, and just get the get the attitude there and get the energy, get your energy up. And that helped me more than anything, because every night after performance, people would just say, I felt like I was watching all of these ladies, and you put me there. You brought the character to life. All of you brought the characters to life. So that was a testament really to the direction, because I was just memorizing the lines and trying to sound like her and worried about that when, getting the story out there was the important thing.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Sam?
Sorry, my cat keeps trying to get into the shot too.
I
The
think
cat's
that's-
not
Yeah.
What was the question?
Well, they were saying that they picked certain phrases and words and things that they really wanted to hit to like portray the actor's either accent or their persona. Is there anything that you did for Pat that helped you with that?
I tried to focus a lot on her mannerisms. She would hold her hands in a certain way, and I didn't try necessarily to reproduce her accent, but really it was the wig.
The wig did it.
Yeah.
The wigs.
Yeah.
Pat.
Yeah, that's shout out to Maggie Harris, who's one of our previous guests.
Yeah, absolutely.
She showed us some wig tips and things like that, and she did the wigs for the show. And actually, the wigs that she made, right there, they are. So anyway, yeah, so that's it's really interesting. I mean, I've done the same thing as a historical character, and I totally agree with everything that you guys say. It's like it's really hard to capture the complete essence. All you want to do is capture that like hint of it, so people are like, oh, okay, yeah, that's it, I got it.
The writer gives you the skeleton. They give you the words, and here is the skeleton, here is the outline for you to start with, and then the actor has to bring the flesh and blood with your motions, your voice, and then layer on top of that the costuming. Yeah. And every layer that you put on top of it, as long as they're harmonious, builds this more and more complete picture.
Yeah. Just adding into that, and you guys can talk about this a little bit, is in my experience, when you're portraying somebody like this, a historical character, the further you go along in it, you've done your research, you've started saying the lines that the playwright's given you, which he's researched as well, and then you get your costume, and then you get your wig, and then you get that prop that just is great. Does that the way it kind of works for you guys, and then all of a sudden you just kind of fall into that, or is it more of an immediate process for you, or
it takes a while?
I'm sorry, say again, Sam.
it takes a little while. And I mean, I was very stressed out at the beginning because I thought I have to sound exactly like her and talk her way and move her way. But Jennifer was amazing. It was like, no, you're just calm down.
Calm down.
Calm down. We're freaking out, Sam, but you're Sam and Pat. It was great. I loved it.
That's cool.
Wait, I thought she said that to me. Pretty sure she
I
said
said calm down a lot.
And you're right with Anthony's costumes. You know, when I saw the yellow dress on Holly, that put me in the time period.
Yeah. And just again, another shout out real quick. Anthony Hurd does a lot of our costumes here. He does a great job, and he did an amazing job. At least I think so on this show. I thought they fit the time periods and the people just great. So
he found some vintage pieces, and he built some pieces, and just the combination of things. He's wonderful to work with too. He's so creative. Yeah,
you can tell him a vague overview of what you want for this stuff, and he'll just come at you with ideas, and it's great. It just turns out so well. Great. So I touched on the fact that this play is quite unique because you're doing historical characters. It's also unique in two other ways, I think, and in the way that we did it here. All female cast and an all female director for our show, and then also the fact that you guys never interacted with each other on stage. It was just a long monologue for each of you, and you went in from these scenes to scenes. How was that? I mean, working with an all female cast was probably great, but how did that go for you guys, and how was it not interacting with each other on stage?
It was weird because, most plays you show up for rehearsals, the whole cast is there, the director's there, but for the most of the time it was just one-on-one with Jennifer. I didn't see Holly or Sarah for ever. But when we all got together, it was amazing. I love working with all ladies.
Yeah, I would say that for me, it was so difficult at first because this was new for me as well, to be in a play but not with anyone else, so to speak. And Jennifer was wonderful. And of course, I was very nervous about, giving her what she was looking for and giving myself what I wanted to do. But then realizing I don't have those other actors to bounce things off of was bizarre, because you do that in other plays. You are waiting for a cue, or you're, how about you do it this way? Or why don't you come in from that side? And not having that experience was so bizarre. But in the end, and I'm not saying I don't want to be in a play with other people, because of course I do. But in the end, it was also freeing as well. It was very, it's just you, kid, like if you fail, it's on you. If you succeed, it's on you. And so it was kind of nice. And then, as Sam said, when we all got together, we got to see what amazing things the other people were doing. And it was just so like, I get it, like I see it now, and we're all here. It was great.
What were you about to say, Sarah?
I don't remember.
Oh, sorry.
What she was saying.
Started at the same time. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
No. That means I was totally into what you were saying.
Yeah. Jennifer, how was it? I mean, have you directed anything before this? I'm not sure.
No. And I may never direct anything again, because this was kind of the perfect experience, and I don't want to mess it up.
Okay. Quit while you're ahead.
But it was. I enjoyed the one-on-one creative time to start with, and as an actress, I've done that solo thing before, and it is really intimidating to to be on a stage alone, and nobody's going to pick up your your cue, and nobody's going to help you. But Holly, you said it in the end it was kind of freeing. I think that I would like to do that again, because being able to just you're there, you're in your bubble, and what you create is yours. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Very cool. That's right. I mean, that's what we're all there for as actors, is
yeah, exactly.
This is my time.
I need for you to me.
Yeah.
So being on the backstage, that first performance when those bright lights came up and they were right there, right where I am.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
but it was
Okay. So that's something that I'd like to talk about anyway. Being a backstage production, just for those of you at home that may not have seen a backstage production or whatever, we do it on the stage with the people seated on the stage with the actors, which means that we have a limited space, which means that the audience members are right on top of the actors. Not right on top, but close.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, right about there. I mean, I've literally tripped over a person's foot because they put it on the stage. So we're that close. And I think all of you, as actors, have acted either in Shakespeare or a main stage or something like that. So you guys were doing this by yourself, which is, you're not interacting with anybody else. It's basically a long monologue. That's completely different. But then you're also there where you can literally see audience members reacting to what you're doing. And so how different is that? And how different is that from a main stage? And how do you prepare? Is there any way to prepare for that in your opinion? Or can you do some tricks to make sure that you're not going to just go up?
something else I thought Jennifer, well, at least prepared me. I'm sure she did the same thing with you too, but she would sit in different spots because I would get focused just straight in front of me, and she would say, you know, over here and um, over here, and focus your energy everywhere. So I would try to just focus my energy everywhere. And of course, my character would go and pour herself a drink quite often. And I would, pour myself a drink and make sure I would say this line way over here to this person. And there were a couple of lines every time I focused in this area, or I was talking about, Jerry, I would focus over here. And so it just kind of spread that energy around. I keep saying that word, but
Well, I mean,
that was a word I told myself.
Yeah, I think Betty's energy was kind of spread out anyway. Like, sorry about that. Our free 40-minute time limit on Zoom ended, and I had to restart a meeting. We were having such a good conversation that we wanted to continue it. So just to come back to it, we have Holly Mills with us. She played Lady Bird Johnson. And we have Jennifer Furch, the director of the production, Sarah McDonald, who played Betty Ford, and Sam Raper over here now, who played Pat Nixon. Just if you're coming back and everything's mixed up, just so you know. So we were talking about, what were we talking about? I believe you were doing it, Holly. Do you remember?
Yeah, we were talking about how to prepare for the audience being almost right in your face.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And I brought up that I asked Jennifer very early on in the rehearsal process, hey, do we get to actually talk to the audience? Because generally that's a, acting rule. You don't break the fourth wall. You don't look directly at your audience members or acknowledge their presence. But in this case, our monologues are monologues, but they're kind of like a conversation. It's just that only one person is doing the talking. And so she definitely said, absolutely, yes, you need to look at these people in the face. You need to pick people out. You need to move around and address everyone. And of course, we had people on three sides. Yeah. So that was something I had to get out of the way really quickly so that we knew we could actually address people when we spoke.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about the play is that it's almost set up in a way that you're talking to, I always thought, a reporter about this stuff, but the way that Jennifer did it was said, talk to the audience as if they're asking the questions, or you're trying to explain it to them or tell the story to them, and it works so much better than trying to just like have an imaginary reporter on stage. It's just the audience. So I think that was a really good choice.
If you're used to doing a main stage production, being in those really tight quarters is it's nerve-wracking. But we definitely just made the choice from the beginning. Embrace it, make it part of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Making a bunch of people pretty nervous because I got in people's faces. And
yeah, I love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The city,
yes.
Like way stretched out, and I had to pass through, like it was on the side of the stage, and I had to pass by a chair and him. And his feet were there, and I'm like, well, I bet he'll move when I come right at him. And he was like, oh.
I think that's the difference between a actress that has done a lot of backstage shows and somebody that hasn't quite done as many. Because my first backstage show, I was completely freaked out. I was not as well prepared by my director as you guys were by Jennifer. I did not realize they were going to be that close, and I was doing some. Yeah, I was doing some very physical stuff in which somebody jumped on my back and I was running around and doing all this stuff, and I kind of freaked out a little bit.
And I wonder if like TV acting is more like that. That it doesn't have to be huge. You're not speaking to the back wall. You're speaking to a camera that's really close. I think that would be an interesting thing to experience sometime.
You're exactly right, and I think the backstage productions sort of mirror that in a way, even though it's not quite as close up. That you can't be as big. It looks fake. I don't know. Do you guys agree with that as actors?
Yeah.
I've only done one, so that was Marion Peru in The Music Man. So, yeah, that had to be pretty big, and I tend to think that way. So I have to bring, and I still talk with my hands, and I'm a teacher, so I'm used to being in front of a class or a large ensemble. So I would have to kind of
bring it down a little bit. Yeah.
I remember there was one little thing I did one day, either in rehearsal or performance, I don't remember which. And Jennifer later said, "Oh, that thing where you dusted the speck of dust off the table while you were talking with Lyndon on the phone. Perfect." That makes you more human and just like you're in that moment and it doesn't seem put on. But it's those little movements and moments that people can see when they're that close. So I don't know that I consciously thought about it, but apparently it worked. So it's stuff like that that makes being close neat.
Yeah, I think in a way the backstage allows you to be more natural. You don't have to be as intentional because if you're just thinking about the words that you're saying and doing it, you might just do something like pick a speck of dust off the table because you're being that lady. And whereas in a main stage production where it's so far away, you have to think about, can they see this? Is it worth it? Whatever. If you're just up there being natural in a backstage production, they actually see it and recognize it, I think. So
I think that's when the actor is really starting to inhabit the character. That the small nuances are just happen.
Yeah. So the one thing I did want to talk about with you specifically, Jennifer, is that you worked here for a year. Is that correct?
Oh no, several years.
Several
Way
years.
back.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought.
Back in the day.
Yeah, and you did my position.
Yeah, I was. When I was in college, I worked as stage manager for the children's theater, and then summer theater, and then that kind of morphed into me doing your job at CPAC.
Very cool. So what I wanted to kind of talk about with you specifically a little bit, just for people's backgrounds, is you worked in my position back in the day. And then now you've come back and you directed a show for us in the setting that we have now. Is there anything that like really stood out to you that was way different than what you used to do, or just anything like that?
Not really. It feels like, there upgraded equipment, and upgrades to the facility, which are terrific. But the feel of the place is the same as it was 30 years ago. It's a nice sized facility because it's big enough to accommodate, but small enough to still feel kind of intimate.
Yeah.
So the city has put a lot of effort into upgrading the facility and making it nice, and that's awesome. But it still feels homey to me.
Yeah. I think that's really cool that it feels that way to you, because that means that we're keeping it working in a modern theater, but then also we've still got the feel of doing it back in the day. So that's really neat.
Yeah, it does. It's nice to have that, and I think that's why people do community theater, is because it's a family feeling. When you get into a show and you spend that much time with those people, it's the emotional connections that you make that really make it rewarding.
Yeah, and I'd like to go back to a point that I talked about earlier, about the all-female cast. Just like to talk about that a little bit, because I know that focuses on women that were in the public eye, but really you would not think about them. You would think about their husbands, the president. But this show decided to focus on the women that were behind that man, or not even really behind that man. I don't want to say that, but like were part of that presidency, even though we didn't concentrate on that part. So just, you know, as actors, how did you think about it? Did you think about that as you were doing it, or did that come after, or did it even occur to you at all that it was a kind of an oddly, not odd, I'm sorry, I'm misspeaking as I'm saying this, but a different way of looking at these presidencies?
Isn't it sad that we default to the male perspective as being the right way to do it? And it seems odd to look at a historical event or anything else from the female perspective. I love this play for that.
Yeah.
And you know, that's kind of where we're trying to go in the world, isn't it? To realize that there's 50% of the population that has just as much influence in every situation. Let's maybe pay attention to that.
Yeah, and that's why I'm trying to rephrase my question. I'm still
It's hard,
stuck.
I know.
Yeah, I'm still stuck in that idiom that we have, and I'm trying, like, that's what I'm trying to say, is that they weren't behind these men. They were right beside them. They were doing things on their own and had their own initiatives, and you know, they did things right along with them. But we don't look at history that way,
Right?
And we should.
You're absolutely right, and that's, you know, the default is male gaze, male perspective. The default is, you know, white gaze, you know, white perspective, Christian gaze, Christian perspective. You know, there are a whole lot of people in the world that, you know, look different from each other and are different from each other, and we need to make a concerted effort, I think, as a society, to step into those perspectives and, you know, let stories be told from somebody else's mouth, not necessarily, you know, middle-aged white woman. You know, we need to hear from everybody.
Yeah,
we'll be richer for it.
It was interesting because you realize, I mean, as anything, there's always a second side or another side of the story or the backstory that you didn't know. But to learn that all three of these women influenced these men in so many different ways, and sometimes didn't influence them in the ways they most wanted. I think of Pat, you know, mostly as far as, you know, trying to get Richard to do what she felt was best and right. But yes, to learn that these women did influence so much of how that person was perceived, the president was perceived, and how much they may have influenced decisions that they made, was really interesting and certainly empowering, just as a female, to know that that's there. But again, frustrating that we don't hear it enough.
Any thoughts on that, Sam?
Just
because I feel like Pat was the one that was the most ignored by her husband, the president. I mean, they were all, in the time period, they were all sort of ignored because that was the norm. But I think Pat, it was even taken to another level with Pat because of Richard Nixon being the ego that he was.
Shut her out completely, basically.
Yeah.
Just put her off the room and worry about it, Pat.
Did that perspective influence your performance of her at all? Because I noticed sometimes when I was watching it, you did seem the loneliest and the saddest.
She was hurting, and I mean throughout rehearsals. I mean, I think even like during read through, Jennifer, right? Like I got to a certain point, it was just like, whoa, I can't. Like, okay, I'm going to be crying here. That's just weird. That's just the way it's.
Yeah.
It was heartbreaking. She could have helped him. She really could have.
I like hearing your perspective on that, because that was what occurred to me the most as watching it, is thinking about this like history from a different angle. Should it really be a different angle, or should it all be part of the whole, instead of always looking through the male lens? Were there anything that was just really interesting about the show as a whole, or just your experience as a whole going up into it?
You know, I loved the pictures of the husbands in the background. Like, they were always there, you know. You could kind of interact with the president, sort of, and it was there for the audience to look at. That's kind of comforting. You're on stage by yourself. Yeah. There's at least picture.
Well, and that's an interesting symbol too.
That's true.
You know, it's the man behind the woman at that point. You know, so that's, I mean, it's an interesting twist, like that, like we were talking about. So yeah,
Or lurking and looming in the background.
yeah.
Well, and it was good for some of the audience members that probably would be younger, and some of my friends and the cousins that came that would not have recognized Johnson without looking at him, if that makes sense. So that I thought that was good. And kudos to Matt and Lisa and everybody that helped to get all the props out and the scenery and everything. It was just seamless, and everybody had, the teapots and the whiskey glasses and everything.
This is a really interesting show in that way, because we're trying to make it look like the White House. That's really hard to do on a budget.
Right.
Yeah.
So less is more.
Yeah, and so the way that you set it up, and you just had the same kinds of things, and we just changed a piece of furniture here and a piece of furniture there to fit the aesthetic that went along with that first lady. That was really neat. So yeah, go ahead, Holly.
Yeah. And that's what I thought was one of the unique features that I really enjoyed in this show, was those transitions between the three ladies. One lady is moving out, another is moving in.
Mm-hmm.
The furniture is literally moving out and moving in. And these women actually don't remember. I sort of remember when Sam and Sarah enter, but being on stage, at least for me, I went out there while they're still setting things up. And I think that's interesting, because that's what happens, I would assume, in the White House. The woman is there, but there is activity going on, and she's just doing her thing instead. So I felt like that was actually a really simple less is more thing, like Jennifer said, that was pretty deep and very, it just got at the heart of what was going on.
Well, and apparently when there's a new president inaugurated, they actually do that whole thing in like 24 hours. So one person leaves in the morning, and they spend the whole inauguration day moving their stuff in. It just like that.
Yeah.
Weird.
And so I mean, that's what in the show it talks about, is the first ladies talking to each other a little bit, and explaining what happened. And I guess that was like during that transition thing where they met each other and did that. That's really neat. I didn't know that happened in like a 24-hour period. That's crazy. And I bet that's what it felt like, is just moving people coming in front of you, and you're just sitting there waiting and, directing it.
This was your home. See you, bye.
Yeah. Really odd to think about. So, okay. Well, I mean, I really enjoyed this conversation, guys. This is a really cool look into how things happen. So thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to have you guys on again for another edition of this. So thanks for joining me.
Thanks. You.